Hey folks, good morning, good people. Welcome to the Daily Brexit. Reporting from Euro Disneyland for Infowars.com. I'm Olly Connelly. Thanks for turning up. And now, brink of betrayal. So, the Prime Minister finds herself between a rock and a hard place. Her globalist masters on the one hand demanding corporate compliance, the largest ever turnout in British history on the other hand, reminding her that she's supposed to be British, a public servant, and with a specific mandate to deliver Brexit, not bloody BRINO. Yeah, Brexit in name only, yeah? Brexit campaigner, the fiscally aware Roger Arthur is here to separate economic logic from this political game. Roger, thank you for joining me, sir. There's about to be a big cabinet meeting where this PM carves out a compromise to appease both Brexiteers and Remainers, so we're told. The talk is of her trying to sell some kind of a customs union, which the EU says would require freedom of movement, i.e. they control our borders. Theresa May seems intransigent, disinterested in what the public wanted, which was to walk away. What part of what we're seeing leads to democracy and Brexit, Roger?
Well, of course, what she told us was that no deal is better than a bad deal. So we have to ask, what would be a bad deal? Well, it's very simple, really. It's one that leaves us paying money into the EU, subject to EU regulations, with open borders, and unable to negotiate our trade agreements. That is not what 408 constituencies voted for, of course.
408 out of 650. Worth making that point.
That's right. That equates to 62.8%, which is a bigger mandate than any government has ever had.
Incredible.
So, you know, there should really be no contest here. The object must be to detach ourselves from ECJ jurisdiction. We know that it is killing. You know, the regulations that we have are killing our entrepreneurs. It's not big business that suffers so much because big business can actually lobby unelected bureaucrats in Brussels to get the legislation they want to protect them from competition by SMEs, that's small to medium-sized enterprises, you know, small businesses, small entrepreneurs. These are the people that come up with new ideas. These are the people that improve productivity. If we are going to move forward as a nation, and we can do it far better once we're free of that big burden of regulations, then we need to be out totally. We need to be able to negotiate with people outside the EU. We will beat the EU. We will leave them standing. We will leave them in the dust because we have, once we're free of that burden, we will be free to innovate. We don't have to provide vacuum cleaners to South America that comply with EU regulations. We will be able to do what Dyson does best. Those are the key issues, I believe. What is worrying?
Roger,
sorry.
Let me ask you, please, just to clarify this disparity that we're seeing between the talk coming out of, for example, the CBI that looks after big corporate interests and I think is funded by the EU as well. And there seems to be no dialogue coming from the SMEs, the small to medium-sized enterprises. There is a difference, though, isn't there? The corporates, they rely or they want cheap labor, i.e. free movement, for example, to help boost their profits. And also, they have some kind of a tax avoidance scam here, no? Whereas SMEs do not take advantage and are just, my word, just have an incredible amount of red tape to deal with. Is that the difference?
Absolutely. In fact, what we're talking about here is that 99% of UK businesses are SMEs. They're not the people that the CBI generally represent, but we rarely hear from them. Over 90% of UK companies don't even export to the EU, but they have to comply with EU regulations. Now, as you quite rightly say, Ollie, big business prefers free movement of labour and free movement of capital because they facilitate wage compression and tax avoidance. They lobby in Brussels for regulations, as I said earlier, which protect them against competition. Now, that's no good to the UK consumer. Neither is the fact that we're inside the customs union, because if we were outside the customs union, we would be able to import from countries all over the world and not support French farmers by inflating the prices that we pay in the shops. So there are a number of, of course, we know that the CBI and many businesses don't want tariffs applied to exports to the single market, but they neglect that the UK will get back even more in tariffs if the EU insists on applying tariffs, because we import a net 80 billion from the EU, and that figure is increasing. Our imports from the EU are increasing. That doesn't mean increase in UK jobs. That means a reduction, a long-term reduction in UK jobs as a result of our membership of the EU.
You have been doing the maths. I know that. What would the difference be were we to leave the customs union and have full control over our trade agreements?
Well, the first thing the direct costs and the indirect costs are the ones to think about. The direct cost is about £9 billion a year. If we pay 18 billion a year into the EU to be a member, we get, and they give us back 9 billion, which we've got no control over, of course. Then that leaves us with a 9 billion figure net. But if the EU insists on applying tariffs, then we will end up, according to Civitas, with another 6 or 7 billion. So overall, we will be up to about 16 billion better off indirect costs. Now, I believe that what we should be saying to the EU is, look, two things. One, the 39 billion that we're going to pay you, which we shouldn't be paying you, but we'll come back to that later, the 39 billion that we're going to pay you will reduce by £5 billion for every year's delay in Brexit. Secondly, on day one, we are not going to apply any tariffs. We will not apply tariffs for 1 year, but then we will apply the same tariffs as you.
The bottom line, Roger, is we should just have turned round to them from the outset, the day after referendum day, and said, we're repealing the 1972 European Communities Act, and we want to talk trade. And by the way, we'd like a set of accounts.
Well, exactly. I mean, you probably know already that Article 50 does not require the country that's leaving to pay anything. And in fact, the Lords debated the issue and they confirmed that. So it's a bit like having a contract. If you had a service contract with somebody, you would have a let-out clause. And in that let-out clause is Article 50. But in that process, you would say, right, let's see the accounts. Now, what is it we paid that we didn't get anything back for? I'll give you one example. It's the £9 billion in rebate that Mr. Blair gave away in exchange for modifications to the CAP system. There were no changes to the CAP system. So I would say to the EU, I want my £9 billion back. Put that on the list. That's the first thing. Then I'd say, we've invested in so many assets in the EU. I want that value back. We'd say that you haven't even managed to, get rid of those black holes in your accounts for 20 years. Yes. What I'd like is the figure, whether it's 4%, whatever it is. I want that on the list as well. So that's what should have been. That's what should have happened at the beginning.
Roger.
And secondly, I don't think we even know what she's going to get for the 39 billion. Theresa May started negotiating with the EU. She should have a list, as you would with a contract if you were trying to terminate a contract, a list of what you are owed and what hasn't been delivered. Well, one example of what has not been delivered was Mr. Blair gave away £9 billion in exchange for reform of the CAP system.
Yes.
That's a system that subsidises landowners, and those landowners don't even have to be farmers. So the system needed to be reformed. Blair said, "I'll give you this £9 billion. You reform the CAP system." Nobody ever reformed the CAP system. So I would say, I want that money back. You didn't do the reforms. I want the money back.
Where is the accountability? Aye. Roger Arthur, thank you very much indeed, sir. Impossible subject to cover in 10 minutes. I appreciate very much your coming in.
Okay, thank you.
You've been watching The Daily Brexit with me, Olly Connelly, for Infowars.com. Here's to us and bugger plutocracy.